So of course, as always, with these dark models, you want to use black primer. And before you start putting down any layers of actual paint, well, Abaddon Black is actual paint, but you want to put this Abaddon Black down to fix any mistakes later with that. And we are starting off with armor. You want to pretty much just layer or glaze with Dark Reaper all of the elevated areas and edges. If you mess up during this step, it's not a big deal, really. You can just take your Abaddon Black and fix it with that. And as you will see me do these glazes, I will progressively add white scar to my Dark Reaper to make it brighter and brighter to sort of imitate non-metallic metal look. Here I'm just applying Dark Reaper to the edges on her shin bone, or shin armor rather. And as I said, you can just glaze or even layer Abaddon Black down on your mistakes to fix them. Here I am slowly building up those highlights and glazes to really actually look like the armor is reflecting the light. This is also the longest step of the whole process. I really took my time building up the armor, because after all, the armor is the largest area on the miniature itself, if I'm not counting the base. So with those glazes and layers, you wanna create smooth transitions, we wanna create gradients. So just look in the video where you wanna put those reflections. If you think that you wanna put them somewhere else, that's not an issue really. But I think that I pretty much put it where it should be, where the light actually gets. Pretty much you wanna imagine where the light is gonna actually hit the armor. And that's the area where you will build those reflections. So here is some progress check, as you can see. This is looking quite good already. You can see where I have put my reflections down with a little bit of white added to the mix. Now of course you don't want to build only the legs, but also your arms and the backpack. Actually, you wanna really take your time to build up those reflections on the backpack, because after all, it's the most elevated area on the whole miniature. So of course, the light is gonna be directly hitting it from the top. So as you will see, it's gonna be like the brightest glaze on the whole armor. And this is looking quite good already, but it still needs more white. Also, you wanna edge highlight with your Dark Reaper and a little bit of white scar to actually make it look like armor. This is pretty much the same thing that you are doing when you are highlighting a Space Marine. So just do the same thing with this Sister of Battle. Just highlight all of those edges. Slowly but surely you will get there. You especially want to build up those highlights on the backpack because the light is hitting it directly from the top. Okay, so here I am just building up those highlights. Just add more white along the way as you go. And to really make it bright, to really create illusion of a light reflection, you want to add white to the top of this skull on her knee armor, on her knee pad, and just put down the same tone of the Dark Reaper and white to the top edges of her armor, just like I'm doing here. And really take your time to build up those layers slash glazes to make it really smooth to create the gradient. You can really water it down to make it smooth, and you can really play with it. Here I'm just fixing my mistakes that I have made along the way on her knee. And I'm just really taking my time building up those highlights and reflections. When you are building reflections on the armor sort of like this, you really want to water down your colors and take your time to build up those reflections. So you really want to put down a bright layer or glaze on the backpack because it's the most elevated area and the light is hitting it the most. Here I'm adding highlights to the reflections, just making it more smooth. On the thighs, on the backpack, just pretty much everywhere. And this is what I got after some while. It looks pretty good already, pretty smooth. And after you are done with that, you wanna edge highlight with Dark Reaper and white, pretty much all of the edges. But make this highlight somewhat thinner than your last highlight. And after some time, this will really make your armor just pop. Here I am just showing you where to put your highlights. It's basically every top part of the armor, maybe not lower parts of the armor as the light cannot go there. Here you wanna put down black layer on these sort of buttons and highlight it with Dark Reaper and white. It's gonna make it more interesting in my opinion. And I think this is a finished armor in my opinion. It looks good to me, so this is where I will leave it. Of course, I have forgotten about these lilies on her boobs. So you will pretty much do the same. You wanna highlight them twice, once with darker mix and once with added white to the mix. And this is what we got. You can even put down a brighter layer of the paint. Now, since the armor is done, you will put down a layer of lead belcher on her bolter. After you are done with that, just slap some Noon oil on there. And finish the bolter with highlight of Runefang steel, pretty much on every edge of the bolter. Of course, don't forget to drill the barrel of the bolter. And of course there are some bullets that you wanna paint with Retributor armor. Just be careful not to stain the area around it. And after you are done with putting down a layer, just slap some Rakeland flesh shade on there. Now for the braces, you wanna just highlight those with Celestra Gray. And just be really neat and careful. But don't worry too much, because you can fix your mistakes at this step with Abaddon Black. Highlight every edge of her braces. And in the middle there is sort of a zipper thing. You wanna just put down a layer of lead belcher. There are also these sort of buttons that you wanna layer with lead belcher. Now I'm taking Null oil and just washing the whole braces. To finish the buttons, you wanna take your Runefang steel and just highlight them really carefully at this point. Okay, so the armor, the bolter and the braces are now done. So now I will do the sleeves and the tabard. I will put down a layer of Mephiston red. And just be careful not to stain your armor at this point, because that could be really troublesome. Also on the sleeves here. And this is what you got so far. and wash it with Agrex Earthshade. Once again, really carefully not to stain the armor around this sort of cape. And of course the sleeves. Now I realize I have forgot about this little area above her belt, so I have painted it with Mephiston Red and washed it with Agrex Earthshade. Once the wash is dry, you wanna put down a layer of Mephiston Red to make it nice and smooth and to pretty much make it tidy. Don't forget about the inner part of the sleeves and focus mainly on the elevated areas. Now you wanna progressively build up this tabard. Now I will use Evil Sun Scarlet for that, and pretty much I will highlight most of the edges and some of the elevated areas. Okay, so this is what we've got after the first highlight. And to build it up even more, I will use Fire Dragon Bright on all of the edges and just a little tiny bit on the elevated areas. And just be really careful because you don't want to mess up at this point. Also, you can see these little sort of recesses. So around those, I'm also using my Fire Dragon Bright to make them pop. Don't forget about the sleeves and all of the edges on the tabard. And you can just leave it be whenever you are happy with it. Now, once again, there are some metallic buttons on the cloak, so just build some black on there and highlight it with Runefang steel. Once again, you can really take your time not to stain any area around it. Now on to purity seals. You wanna base them with Corn Red and Pink Horror. Once dry, you wanna wash them with Karaberg Crimson. And the first highlight is gonna be of 1:3 ratio of Corn Red and Pink Horror. Now with pure Pink Horror, you wanna just highlight top areas of this wax. Now I'm adding even White Scar to the mix, and this is gonna be our final highlight of this Purity Seal wax. Okay, so once you paint all of the wax areas of the purity seals, you wanna move on to the parchment paper. And just take your Ushabti bone and build up those layers on all of the purity seals. Don't forget about the back side of the purity seal. Also this thing on her leg, I don't know what it even is, but apparently the miniature is painted with Ushabti bone on it, so let's do that. And just take your time, because you don't want to stain the armor. And once it's done, you want to put down a wash of Agrex Earthshade. Now I will come back to my Ushabti bone and just clean it up a little bit, mostly on the top areas. And you will do this on all of the purity seals pretty much. Don't forget about the area on her leg. And now with Screaming Skull, you will build up first highlight of all the parchment papers. Also, if you want, you can sort of dry brush it. Now I am adding white scar to my Screaming Skull in 1:1 ratio, and now I'm just highlighting the very edges of the parchment paper. And now to make it more interesting, I am taking a button black, but you can of course take some really dark brown, for example, Rhinox hide, and with really small movement and really nice tip on the brush, you can create some letters, some text. And believe me, it's gonna look really good when you are finished. And I will apply this step on all of the parchment papers across the miniature. Now to actually fully finish the armor, you want to also paint these socket areas. I will put down a layer of Celestar Gray and fix these highlights with Abaddon Black. There will also be some highlights on her soles, on her shoes, and be really neat with those, some thin lines. And to make it nice and smooth, apply Null Oil. Now for the trims of her sleeves, I am applying Ulthuan Grey, being really neat around those areas because you don't want to stain your red or the armor or whatever. So take real thin brush to paint it. And once you are done with that, put down a thinned down wash of Nuln Oil to make it look more natural. And I will highlight all of the edges with my Ulthuan Grey. Now I'm moving on to the shoulder areas, still with the Ulthuan Grey. And I will just put down a layer of Ulthuan Grey on both sides. And once you got a nice smooth layer of Ulthuan Grey, take your Nuln Oil and wash it with that. And once it's dry, take your Ulthuan Grey and pretty much layer it once more, and this time leave those recesses be with the Nuln Oil. So pretty much you will start highlighting this white symbol, leaving Nuln Oil in those recesses. And if you mess up during this point, you can just come back to Nuln Oil and apply it once more. After that, you wanna build additional highlight of white scar, and you don't want to highlight the whole symbol, but just the very edges of it. Now for the rims of her shoulder pads, you want to mix Liberator Gold and Runefang Steel and just put down a layer of that. And be really careful around those purity seals because you don't want to stain them. Here you can see that I messed up a little bit, but I'm gonna fix it later with a button black. And this is a big advantage when you are painting dark models because you can always come back to dark color and fix your mistakes. And when you see that the paint is too watery, just put some off and add more paint instead of water. And as I said, here I'm fixing the mistake that I have made. And it still looks pretty cool. And once you got that, just put really thin layer of Noon oil on there. You certainly don't want to drown it in Noon oil. This way it will keep on being shiny. And with Lead Belcher I am highlighting these buttons on her shoulder pads. You can probably also use Runefang Steel if you are not happy with Lead Belcher. Now for her little belt, I'm using Gorter Brown and Ariel Yellow, but you can pretty much use any other brown if you are not happy with this one. And just be really careful because you have painted most of the area around it. Especially be careful around this armor because fixing that would be really hard. So just be really patient and keep on moving forward. Highlight even this front belt area. And once you got that, wash the belt with Agrax Earthshade. Now I'm adding more yellow to the mix and I will highlight all of the edges on my belt. Once again, be really careful because fixing any mistakes now could be a little hard. And highlight these little pins or buttons or whatever that is with Lead Belcher or Runefang Steel. Just take your time and put it down. Now I'm taking my lead voucher and putting down a layer on this grenade and on the little chain and even the belt. Also this neck area. And I'm just taking my time, my sweet time, to put down a layer of lead voucher on all metallics. Now with the backpack you wanna be careful because you wanna fix recesses with black to create a separation, and after that you will actually put down a layer of lead voucher. So now be really careful not to ruin the glazes that you have built. And once you got that, just put down a layer of your lead voucher. And with each step that you are doing on the miniature, you want to be more and more careful because fixing any mistakes at this point is going to be really hard. Now since I have finished putting down my lead voucher, I will just wash all of the areas with Null oil. And don't forget about any metallic areas, even this little lily in the middle of her armor. Now you will just build up a highlight of Runefang steel and be really neat and careful at this point because you are almost there, the miniature itself is almost finished. And one last thing that we will paint before starting painting the head are these gold little parts. So just put down a layer of Retributor armor. And since this is the last part, be as neat as you can. There are exactly 5 different golden pieces on her armor. and wash them with Rakeland Flesh Shade. And at this point I noticed that I have pretty much destroyed any separation on my lily, on the backpack. So I took my Abaddon Black and painted the separation with that. And the last thing that you are gonna do with your gold is taking Liberator gold and highlighting all of the edges on these little golden symbols. And once again, be as neat as you can. And so here is the progress check. Pretty much everything on the Sister of Battle is done, but the hat. So for the face, you want to use Kislev Flesh and just put down a layer of that, spread it all over her face. Well, that didn't sound right. But yeah, pretty much spread it all over her face. And with the watered down Rakeland Flesh Shade, wash all over her face. And focus mainly on those recesses and inner parts of her face. And now I will come back to my Kislev Flesh and I will put down this layer pretty much on all of her elevated areas on the face. So that is her forehead, her eyebrows, her nose, her chin, and her cheeks. And as I go along the way, I will add Flayed One Flesh, maybe 1 or 2 times, and highlight all of the mentioned areas. So once again, her cheekbones, her nose, her chin, her eyebrows. And as you can see, I am leaving out her lips for later. One thing that I really don't understand is that I never see eyebrows on the miniatures. So as you will see, I will actually paint the eyebrow. Here I am just highlighting the areas around her scar. And to create the eyes, you wanna put down a layer of white scar on these little areas. And really take your time to be really precise. Now I'm taking my black and I am really taking my time to apply it in the middle of the eye to create an iris. Here is the first one, and here is the second one. Now for her lips, I will apply Rayclan Flesh Shade one time. Now I will apply it second time. After that I will take Kislev Flesh and paint her lower lip. And with Corset Crimson I am applying a light wash. Now the last thing that you are gonna do on this miniature, without counting the base, is her hair. For that I am using Celestia Grey, and be really careful around her armor. So this is what it should look like. And you will slowly build up the hair using Ultron Grey and really thin brush strokes. Just take your time to create a really nice hair. Don't forget to highlight with your Ultron Grey the area around her face. You wanna really put emphasis on the top of her head, as that's the area where the light is gonna fall the most. Okay, so this is what we've got so far, and this, in my opinion, is already a really good hair. But I'm gonna push it a little step further with white scar. And you wanna put your white scar on all of the edges around her face. And of course, you wanna put down white scar on top of her head, because that's the area that is gonna be exposed to the light the most. Now I'm mixing Ultron Grey with a itty tiny bit of Altdorf Blue. And for the mid section of her hair, I am creating sort of shade. The point is to make it a little darker than top of her head. And once you are done with that, just put your white scar once again and make some gradient around in there. And the same goes for the other side of her hair. Okay, and this hair is pretty much done. It looks pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's really good in my opinion. And the Sister of Battle herself is pretty much done in my opinion. But of course, you want to add an eyebrow. This step is purely optional. I think that with eyebrow she looks way better. And you will build up the eyebrow with Ultron Grey. And this is the Sister of Battle, fully finished, and all that is left is just the base. The first layer that I'm gonna put down is Flayed One Flesh. And the only advice here that I'm gonna give you is be patient and be careful around the feet, and that's it. Otherwise you can be sloppy as much as you want. And since I hit those feet, now I have to fix those mistakes with Abaddon Black, which is not a big deal because I didn't hit them that much. And after you are done with that, take your Agrix Earthshade and put down a layer of that on the whole base. And once the wash is dry, once again take your Flayed One Flesh and dry brush it on the stone area. Once again you want to be careful around the armor, but otherwise you can be as sloppy as you want. And since I want to be careful around her feet, I'm taking smaller brush to pretty much finish this symbol in the middle. And since some of the wash in the recesses sort of faded with my dry brush, I am taking my Agrix Earthshade once again and just putting it down in the recesses. And with Longbeard Grey, I am mainly dry brushing the top area of the stone base. Now for the little roses, I am base coating them with Emperor's Children mixed with Abaddon Black. And just be careful because at this point you cannot really fix the base. I mean you can, but it's sort of problematic. And for the little leaves, you wanna use Varbo's Green. Once you are done base coating the flowers, take your Noon Oil and pretty much go over the leaves and also the roses. Now to finish the leaves, I am adding aerial yellow to highlight them. And to make it more realistic, I am also taking Nurgling green and mainly focusing on the edges of the leaves, just layering it down. Now for the roses themselves, I am building up a highlight of Emperor's Children here. And remember that you don't have to do this according to me. You can pretty much do this with any other pink or violet color. This is just what I used. So after that, I have added more white scar to my Emperor's Children, and once again I am building up that highlight. If you were using any other pink or violet or purple color, just add more white scar and highlight it with that. And since I am still not really happy with the flowers, I will just add a little more white, and in this case there is more white than there is pink. So just highlight the very top edges of these little flowers. And to finish the model, the last thing that you are gonna paint before you actually finish the trim of the base with black are the candles. And for the little golden part of these, you are gonna use Retributor armor. And be really careful around the armor area because you don't want to stain that. The candles themselves are gonna be painted with corn red. Also paint the wax that has already melted in the pot. And with Nuln oil, you wanna pretty much cover the whole wax and the candles area. I will also fix the pot, or rather the edge of the pot, with Retributor armor. And with Rakeland Flash Shade, you wanna wash the pot itself, so all of the golden areas. And for the pot, I am highlighting it with Liberator Gold. All of the edges and little ornaments on this little thing, you are gonna highlight it. Now I'm getting some Mephiston Red, pure Mephiston Red, and I am just painting the top of the wax of the candles and also some of the wax that is dripping down from the candles. Also the top areas on the candle, you wanna paint that with Mephiston Red too. Just leave out the bottom parts. And you want to progressively make it brighter and brighter because there is a flame on the top of the candle, and of course it makes the whole candle bright, right? So just build up those layers to make it brighter and brighter. Here, for example, I am adding more Fire Dragon Bright to my mix. And there is no true recipe on what is the right ratio of the paint, so just pretty much do it according to your feeling. And just highlight the top areas and the dripping wax from the candles. Now I'm even adding a little bit of yellow to make it more bright at the top. And to finish the candles, you wanna put down Ulthuan Grey on the flame area. And with White Scar, you wanna put down a little layer to the bottom of the flame, because like that's the brightest part of the fire itself. Now I'm taking Flesh Gits Yellow and just glazing it over the whole flame area, just being really patient with it. And as you go to the top, you wanna just put down more darker tones of the color. So here I am adding more Fire Dragon Bright to my Flesh Gits Yellow. And just be really careful and just take your time to make it realistic. As the time goes, I'm also adding a little red to my mix. And pretty much the sequence follows that you will start with white, then yellow, then a little bit of orange, and then at the top of the flame there is gonna be red, and also a little bit of black, as you will see in a minute. So here I'm just fixing the dark colors with a little more bright, lighter colors. So just glazing it over and over again. Here I'm adding more yellow to the flame to make it more interesting and more structured. And the very tip of the flame is gonna be painted with Abaddon Black. You just want to glaze over it. And here we are, the Sister of Battle is pretty much finished. And just to finish the base, you will put down 2 thin layers of Abaddon Black to make the edge of the base really nice and smooth. Okay guys, so this is pretty much it. I hope that you liked this video. If you did, give it a thumbs up. And if you really liked it, subscribe to my channel for similar tutorials. And see you guys in the next video.